Happy Friday, everybody. It is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast coming at you. Hope Houday Nation is doing well. It's a little bit of an impromptu show, and truth be told, I feel bad for my co-host, John Sheeran, because I told him, hey, man, I'm out of town most of the week. Let's take the week off. And then I got back a little earlier than expected today, and I said, hey, this was kind of a little bit of a newsworthy week for the Bengals. Let's do an abbreviated show, talk about some of the headlines. And my guy came through joining. And after I lied to you, John. I'm sorry.
Ain't no rest for the weary, man. Ain't no rest.
True. Sounds like you got a big weekend ahead as we were kicking things off. Tell the people about this thing in case they don't know about it. This beer fest that you got going on, because I'm jealous out here. That sounds like a hell of a good time.
Yeah, if you guys see me tomorrow at Jungle Gyms and for the annual beer fest, you did not see me. Just letting you guys know right now. It would be me and a couple friends and trying basically every single beer that we can possibly do in the 4 or 5 hours that we're there. So yeah, if you see me, you didn't. That's all.
You didn't see, or at least don't report on supposed actions or other questionable activities. I'm just kidding. My guy John, he keeps it together. But have a good time, my friend. At that. Bengals got together this week for mandatory minicamp, and there were some headlines. And I guess the biggest, because we were wondering what was going to happen with this, the biggest was Jonah Williams making an appearance and bringing in some quotes about his, the process this offseason. And, I have to give Jonah Williams a lot of credit. We're gonna pull up the quotes in the article on Cincy Jungle. I got to give him a lot of credit. I know maybe he didn't handle this the way everybody wanted him to handle the Orlando Brown Jr. signing on the forefront. I know he felt that the team didn't handle this the way that he felt they should, and at least communicate with him what their plans were up front. I think this thing kind of got, moved very fast, and the Bengals just kind of had to pounce when they could, and didn't really think this was going to be a possibility for them getting Brown. And so Jonah Williams has shown back up. He's had, I guess, a baby girl. I didn't know that. So congratulations to him right before Father's Day there. That's pretty cool. And, so he's got a lot going on, but he's come back here, come back to work. There was a couple of smiles when he was kind of talking, but also, a guy that just kind of said, hey, I'm here to work. I'm here to do what I'm supposed to do. And, I kind of give him credit for that.
I mean, there is the alternative. There are players out there right now who aren't at mandatory minicamp or didn't report, and they got fined for such thing. So Jonah Williams didn't have to show up, but he did, because I genuinely believe he wants to. He wants to be around the team at this point. Like, he was doing his own work in California, where he's from, to rehab, to make sure that whenever he returned to the team, he was capable of doing the rehab drills. And, it was nice to see him back. And it was really refreshing, to hear him speak on the subject. And I think he answered all the questions very candidly and about as well as you could have expected. It was very eye-opening to hear from his perspective, and the fact that it wasn't necessarily about, moving from left to right. Like, it's unfortunate, considering that's where he's been practicing, it's where he's been playing for the majority of his life. But the real thing was, it was just the lack of communication, which is an interesting subject, because I think we can all agree, the Bengals weren't necessarily obligated to tell him what the plans were, or to tell him right at that second what was going down. But it was interesting to hear, if this happens to be true, which I don't think he was necessarily lying about it, that the front office, the ownership group, has yet to really, make contact with him, despite, him and his agent trying to, see what was going on during that everything that happened when he found out that, Orlando Brown was signing via Apple News while his wife was 40 weeks pregnant out in California. Like, it's probably a lot to process. And, he managed it the way that he saw fit, and he's approaching this next year the way that he sees fit as well, which is be with the team, rehab on his own schedule, and make sure that he's fully 100% to compete for the starting job. That, again, it will greatly define how the rest of his career kind of ends up at this point, because if he happens to beat out Leo Collins and Jackson Carman, that's another year of starting under his belt, and he can take that, and hopefully he builds off of what he did last year and improves in some areas at this new position, and he can re-enter the market and try to see if he can get what he's after.
I'm really curious. I'm going to share this one too. I'm really curious to see what happens if this goes. I don't know if I don't know if the phrase "according to plan" is the right phrasing here, but I mean, if this goes a good direction where he takes this opportunity at right tackle, wins the job, plays well, and parlays that into a good, a next quality contract, and if the Bengals would pursue him on that front, because here's this article right here. It's on Cincy Jungle. Jonah Williams says still no communication with the Bengals front office in terms of his future. So the quote here, like you said, this was, you mentioned him learning about the Orlando Brown Jr. signing on Apple News. You can see here, I felt that if we were communicated, hey, we have the opportunity to sign this guy and we like him, we want to bump over and play right tackle. We want you to bump over and play right tackle. It sucks. Like, it would be hard to hear, but I think in a couple of days would have been like, okay, let's go, let's do it. And I just never got that, and so he said, since then I've talked to Coach Taylor, I've talked to Coach Frank Pollock, and that's given a little bit of clarity. But as far as the front office goes, I never had that conversation. What he also said, John, was that, he mentioned also that his exit interviews he felt went well after the season last year. And I think adding to all of this, we've mentioned it a couple of times, but adding to, I guess, the sensitivity or the emotion with this, with Jonah Williams, has to be the fact where he feels like, dude, I played on 2 busted knees last year. I came back and, this was painful. This was kind of grueling, and I wasn't 100% at times during the season. And so I think there's probably a little bit of a stick in his craw about that. But you kind of said it. I mean, it is a business, and that's where the Bengals decided to go with Orlando Brown Jr. They felt it was an upgrade. They felt like it was something that happened very quickly, and they had to spring for it and hope that he comes back, plays right tackle, and things right itself the way it's supposed to on the offensive line this year.
I think we can all kind of allude to what was more likely to happen, which was the Bengals finding an external answer at right tackle instead of left tackle, and that may have just been like, hey, Jonah, like okay, you're a left tackle. Like, maybe last year wasn't as good as years past, but we're still confident in you starting for us at this position. We're not really looking for any answers until an answer just kind of showed up at their door, and they're like the Bengals should have been chastised if they didn't take advantage of the opportunity that was presented to themselves. And that's just kind of how this thing goes. Like, the Bengals have a responsibility to do what's best for them, just like Jonah has a responsibility to do what's best for him. And in this case right now, it's return to the team and just, play your ass off. And hopefully you play it well enough where the Bengals do well and you do well in the open market. So again, like, it is a bit weird that I guess, Mike Brown has always been known as like a player's owner, if that even exists in today's world. But
yeah,
like, it is kind of weird that, like, this guy's a first-round pick and he's the longtime starter, and the Bengals still clearly value him as a starter, despite what some fans may think. So you would think that there would be some type of communication after 3 months of this, but I guess not. Maybe that's gonna get saved until this whole battle is kind of resolved, and he's hopefully still with the team, meaning that he won the battle and is still proven to have value with this team. So we'll see how this develops, but for right now, it just seems like he's taking the high road, which is nice.
Yeah, it is. And the front office may be in a little bit of a wait and see mode with how this all plays out, but he is back and reported to mandatory minicamp. That was a question that we all had. If he was going to show up, what was the attitude going to be like, and what were the questions and the answers to the questions that were being asked. And he was pretty upfront about it, to his credit. He was pretty upfront. And it sounds like he's kind of had an adjustment of focus and, I guess, attitude, I don't know, about the whole scenario, which is good to see. And looks like he's ready to get to work. Continuing on that, John, there's been a little bit more on the fun side of things, I guess. There's been a lot, still some more back and forth with the Bengals and the Chiefs and the players and all of that. And as we look at things, of course, Joe Burrow, being the consummate professional, was asked about the best quarterback in the league and who's the best quarterback. And Joe Burrow said it was Patrick Mahomes. And this is from Bengals Wire. We don't credit this great site enough, from Chris Rowling. Great site there. Joe Burrow crowns Mahomes as the NFL's best quarterback. So he rightfully says, hey, man, this guy's the king of the mountain right now. He just came off a Super Bowl win. He just beat us in the AFC Championship game. He is the dude. He's the guy to beat right now, and that's what he is gunning for, is Joe Burrow and the Bengals, to get past the Chiefs once again, because that's, where they stumbled last year. So from there, MarrChase was asked about that, and he said, Patrick Mahomes, I think, tweeted out a thing where he's, flashing a photo of the two rings he's won. And, I think he said this Pat or something like that. So at any rate, I mean, again, friendly crossfire, sort of. We've got, if you're on Twitter, God forbid you take a look at what's happening in the weeds between the fan bases. But I mean, again, still, you kind of thought maybe the Bengals wouldn't say so much after what happened last year and the build up and, the Burrow head and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of continuing again. And this rivalry just keeps hitting new levels as we go into 2023.
I really like what Matt Minnick said about all of this, and it's that it should just be a common principle for any quarterback to answer the question the way that Burrow did, which is, I'm not the best quarterback. It's obviously, X, Y, and Z. And even like Patrick Mahomes, if you were to be asked that question, maybe he would say, we're all like really great in our own way. He would try to dodge the answer. I think Burrow's right. The answer is pretty clearly that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback if you want to just take into account of everything. But on that same level, like if a teammate of said quarterback is asked that, he should always support his quarterback. In fact, if he doesn't support his quarterback, it honestly just looks worse. Like it's a different dynamic depending on who you ask it. But this is why I don't really care about any of this, Anthony, is because in 30 or 40 years, like, sports documentaries are going to look a lot different than they do now because of social media, because there's just a whole new layer to everything that kind of goes on. And if this rivalry kind of continues to develop the way that I think Bengals fans hope it does, which is the Bengals responding with a couple of Super Bowls of their own, all this stuff is going to be in the documentary. And I think it's just going to make it better. It just makes the rivalry, it makes the dynamic, it makes just the back and forth just a lot better, because this stuff is better than some of the other things that you see in the NFL right now with some other teams. It's all just fun. None of it's to be taken seriously, but it creates content, and 40 years from now, it'll be content that we kind of look back and say, yeah, that was kind of fun when that happened.
Yeah, the standards for answering these questions, that's a really good point. The standards for answering these types of questions from different types of players, different guys on different teams, that sort of thing, the standards are different. And when you have a quarterback that says, I'm the best quarterback, or I feel I'm the best quarterback, well, and then there's a headline that says, well, what about X, Y, and Z? And, they're slighting these people. But then, if a teammate doesn't come to the backup of their quarterback saying, yeah, that's the guy, it's all of a sudden like, well, why isn't he backing up his own quarterback and saying he's the best? So, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic with that. But, I mean, I think we can all, if we're going to do, again, arbitrary list season right now, if we're gonna follow that kind of stuff, I mean, that is kind of the natural order, I guess, of quarterback rankings at this point, where you have Joe Burrow within that. There's arguments people like to put, Josh Allen maybe above Burrow in some respects, and Herbert, and even Lamar Jackson and others. But I mean, the bottom line is those two guys have been the guys who have not only put up the numbers, but won the big games in the AFC the last 2 years, and even more so for even longer for Mahomes. So, I mean, it's just, again, a little bit of that. Let's add a little bit more fuel to that Bengals Kansas City fire for sure. And it's just becoming, even though they're not in the same division. It is becoming kind of one of those great rivalries in the NFL that we've seen between, Peyton and Tom Brady and all kinds of other great quarterbacks over the years that have battled it out.
And like I said, like none of this is really serious. And if you really do take it seriously, it's more of a reflection on yourself. But at the same time, like no one can compete with the Chiefs in terms of what they've accomplished in the past 5 years. But the closest team, at least in the AFC, who can say that is the Bengals. Like they've beaten them 3 of the past 4 times. The point differential still favors the Bengals, and the only time the Chiefs won was off a field goal, which like all 4 of these games have been up to the wire, and the Bengals have found a way to get the edge on 3 of them. But the Chiefs have done more in terms of just getting past that point and actually finishing the job. So no team can really stand with the Chiefs at all, but the closest one is the Bengals. And it doesn't seem like the Bengals players or, the team in general is fearful of the Chiefs. And it just seems like the Chiefs spent a lot of time talking about the Bengals and trying to put down this team, which is interesting to me, but it's just another layer to the rivalry. It's what makes it actually fun, because it wouldn't be fun if, either side was kind of backing down to one another. It's what creates the conversation, and so it creates anticipation for what New Year's Eve is going to be.
Well, a Bengals quarterback from yesteryear, John Kittner, who was an architect of one of the great kind of renaissances. A really funny story, by the way, just a total sidebar of this trip I was on. I was on a real short cruise. I met this guy who is a really, really huge guy in terms of size. I mean, I'm talking probably 6'7", and he was talking to me about, his son with him had a Cincinnati Reds hat on, and I had a Bengals hat on, that sort of thing. And he's like, "Are you a fan of him?" And yeah, but we just started talking a little bit. Turns out he, I think his name, if I'm not mistaken, Scott Greenawalt. I'll have to double check that, but he is currently or at least he told me he's one of the strength coaches for the USC men's basketball team. But he was the strength coach back in 2003 for the Bengals and Marvin Lewis. So he talked about how he has some ties to the city and all kinds of cool stuff. So fun little story. Even going out of LA and out to just a local little spot, you get these Bengal connections. Kind of fun. But going back to 2003, there is a method to my madness in bringing up that little story there. You see here, John Kittner, the guy who won Comeback Player of the Year that year as the Bengals went 8-8, just missed the playoffs as they lost to the Browns at the end of that season. He recently sat down with Jeff Hobson of Bengals.com and talked about how there's some Warren Moon type elements to Joe Burrow's play, and that's lofty compliments given that Warren Moon is a Hall of Famer, one of the leading passers in NFL history, statistically speaking, namely talking about the deep ball. And I'm old enough to remember, John, I think this offense has since evolved from at least what it was when he was with the Oilers and a little bit with Seattle, but there was a run and shoot offense that the Houston Oilers under Jerry Glanville would run, where it was just kind of a wacky style of play, for lack of better words. Receivers were kind of moving all over the place, and there was a lot of, adjustments and audibles and all kinds of different things. And the Oilers had a pretty potent attack at the time with Warren Moon, but of course Moon and Kittner played together in Seattle after that. And so, I guess why I bring up the run and shoot thing is, there is a little bit of an ad lib element to the Bengals offense, what Burrow does out of the pocket and all of that, and his ability to scramble out and complete deep passes. And I think that's a little bit maybe of what Kittner was referring to, as well as just ball placement, unheralded arm strength, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it was specifically just accuracy at all levels of the field, and trying to get everyone involved. Like that, I think that was what Kittner was more or less referring to. He said, quote, "That's what watching Burrow kind of reminds me of. It can be any of them at any time, down the field, back shoulder. The accuracy is off the charts." And I think that's a pretty fair takeaway when watching Burrow, because rarely are any throws, that are at least makeable for him, are they not like in the near perfect placement, and that leads to a lot of yards after catch opportunities for his receivers, and it just leads to big games when some quarterbacks might be a little bit behind or might be a little bit too high, and it's still a catch, but maybe the play is just dead right there. Burrow has just become so freaking accurate, regardless of what type of throw that it is, regardless of where it is down the field. And obviously throws get more strenuous when you try to put more power onto it, when you're trying to get more air under it. but it's just such a catchable ball, and that's what obviously, like, I never saw Warren Moon play with my own eyes, but like seeing those highlights, it was such a pretty ball, and it was always in the perfect spot. Like, he was just a generational passer, and I think, Anthony, like Warren Moon is one thing, like Drew Brees is another, because that was like Burrow's hero growing up, and they both didn't necessarily have the strongest arms, but Brees obviously threw an extremely catchable ball too, and I feel like that's always been the takeaway with Burrow. And somehow, despite him being really accurate in his final year at LSU, it's probably only gotten better at this point, which is really dangerous.
Yeah, there's a neat video. I think it was from Dan Horde, the great Dan Horde, who does these from practices. He always does these cool five bullet point type of takeaways from practices and that sort of thing on Twitter. And it's a drill where, Burrow's kind of running in and through dummies, practice dummies. And then, he's about 20, 25 yards out from the field goal post and, just dots it right on the crossbar. And the whole point was to, have him work on making accurate throws when off platform, all that kind of stuff. And so they do work on this guy. I mean, I know a lot of that stuff does kind of come and it is on the fly a lot of times, but some of that stuff is worked on to kind of prep the football IQ, the awareness, and the ability to kind of keep the eyes downfield and always keep a play alive. And that's something that Burrow just absolutely excels in with the Bengals and, back in his days at LSU for sure.
It is cool though, like, because obviously like MarrChase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, they're also adept at handling those back shoulders, but it's like not an easy throw to make, and there's definitely nuances between like leading a guy on like a straight 9 ball and putting it right on that back shoulder. And it's so money whenever defenses actually give them the opportunity. And of course, that was the big issue. Defenses weren't giving them opportunities to do so. It's a lot harder of a route to have success with when you're playing cover 2 all the time. So, I think once again, like, this offseason is going to be about making sure that the offense is to a point where you can put defenses in the situations where they have no choice but to give you those opportunities, because it was already really good out of the box when Burrow got into the league, and it's just like he was having Trent Irwin being a successful threat on some of those routes. So like the sky is the limit with it, and it's good that he can definitely see that. I don't love Kittner now because he coaches Lakota East instead of Lakota West, so I'm worried that he's going to make that program a little bit better, but I guess he's still all right.
Yeah. This is a little bit on the injury front, and we'll talk about a positive update with this kind of negative one, though. DJ Reader held out of minicamp dealing with a toe injury. I think there's a couple of elements with this. Number one, I think to his credit, or I guess some people dismay for some people, Zach Taylor's kind of taken a little bit of a white glove treatment when it comes to injuries and treatment and rest and veteran rest and all of that. And really, I know the injury bug hit the Bengals a lot harder last year, but, that 2021 run, they were really healthy through that year. And I think there was a lot of a focus on injury maintenance, health, all of that. And, making sure that guys continue to be healthy, and that paid dividends for him last year. I know that they tried to do that last year. There was kind of some freak stuff with MarrChase's, the hip injury. And then, of course, Reader had his own knee injury as well. Thankfully, that wasn't as serious as originally thought. But, that's also maybe why right now it's like, hey, DJ, you're in the last year of your deal. You're uber important to the defense and the run defense and all of that. This isn't really the time to push it. And so let's just kind of, play it easy here.
I've heard of Gallup before, but it didn't sound like something that I wanted to research. So like I know what it is, or like I've heard of it, but yeah, it's just something that's just like limiting him right now. Like he was still taking reps, I think, at least partially minicamp. But yeah, it's just about like, just take it easy, do what you got to do. But I will say though, because he is a topic of, is he a potential extension candidate? Should they re-sign him next offseason? He's going to be 29, I think, at the end of the season, or maybe during the season. And while this is not like an issue that will take him out of games at all, I think people underestimate how much teams care about how a player's medical report continues to stack. And when you're talking about a team that continually just avoids their contracts or players who are near or above 30 years old, it's something that you can't necessarily like ignore, especially because he was coming off a year where he missed a lot of time with another knee injury. So like the injuries are real, with Reeder, and you wonder, like, okay, he's still a nose tackle. Like, he doesn't need to play 1,000 snaps a year anyways, but it's just something to keep in mind. You know, like, it's like these things aren't necessarily going to go away with him, the older that he gets.
So I don't know a ton about gout either. My understanding of it, I did have a friend who had it, and sometimes it is in older people, but sometimes it is either a hereditary issue or just an issue that just your body has. It's I think it has something sometimes to do with either your liver building up too much enzymes that create whatever acid in joints, that sort of thing, and it causes stiffness, soreness, that sort of thing. Really what it does is it limits range of motion. There's pain involved, obviously, and it's usually in an ankle, your big toes, that sort of thing, certain joints like that. So it can be managed. My understanding, it can be managed with diet and medication, or one or the other type of thing. So we'll see. I'm not a medical professional, but I mean, I've heard the term a little bit. And like I said, I had a buddy who had it, and he used to kind of complain about certain things when it would flare up, and it would go, come and go, right? It's just one of those things where he'd have a problem, and then it would come back and go away, and all kinds of different things. And a lot of times he just had to manage his diet. I think he was on medication. I don't really remember, but it's usually one or the other or both sometimes if it's severe. So this hasn't seemingly been something that has regularly bothered DJ Reeder. So we'll see, but I'm not getting into his personal medical history. That's just kind of what I know a little bit about gout. Very little about it. But anyway, again, I think it's just, being precautionary and taking their time and making sure that everybody's kind of full go by the time training camp comes around. We're going to get out of here in just a couple minutes, just going over some headlines with the Cincinnati Bengals as mandatory minicamp kind of was done this week, and a lot of different sites, sounds, headlines, that sort of thing. If you are new here, welcome. Please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Show icon is above my guy, John Sheeran, up at the corner there. Click that, click the subscribe button, click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. We're going to be hitting it hard throughout the summer and obviously into training camp in the regular season. So you're going to want to get all of the content there. You're going to want to subscribe to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel through your favorite audio streamer. Leave us a review if you can, whether that's on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of the major ones. We are there, so go subscribe to that. Of course, keep it to cincyjungle.com for your Bengals news, opinions, analysis, and go check out what my guy John is doing on the writing side from A to Z Sports as well. Go check out his great work. We're gonna close this up here, John, with a little bit of good news. And of course, if you have other elements or other news bits that I missed that you want to talk about, let's do that. But this I thought was good news, and I mentioned this a little earlier in terms of like Dan Horde's, 5 Twitter things that he notices from practice. And I thought this was good news here. Speaking of looking good after knee surgery, how about the quote jackhammer feet displayed by Chinobi Awuzie? And his quote was, "I feel good. I'm not going to lie. It's just a matter of being patient. Even though I feel good, I know there are still steps to take in the process to be 100%. So here he is right here. Plant. So still taking it easy there. Should we do it one more time? Let's do one more time.
Yeah, let's do it one more time.
People can see it. You see the quick feet. You like that? Jackhammer feet, ladder drill, whatever you want to call that there. So looking pretty good. I know there's some questions. I know there's a lot of excitement with DJ Turner coming into the fold. I know there's a lot of excitement, and it sounds like Cam Taylor-Britt is doing and exhibiting all of the things to show a guy who's going to take the next step in year 2. So excited about that. But Awuzie was playing as a top 10, top 5 corner before his injury. The last couple of years, he was playing outstanding football. And what was funny was when he was brought in, he didn't come in with the fanfare because Trey Waynes was the guy they threw a boatload of money at, I think the year prior, right? So Trey Waynes was the guy that everybody was like, hey, this is the big ticket guy. Awuzie got a nice contract himself, but he came in and I think has, outperformed the contract, or I guess expectations of him, and really has been a borderline lockdown guy before that injury.
I remember him coming out of Colorado, I think is where he went. And he was a really good athlete. Like, he was 6'9", 3 cone, like around high 4.3s, 40. So he was a good athlete, right? the difference being now, like when you're 28, you have wear and tear on you. This is like his 7th, I think, year in the NFL. The guys who last long are the guys that take care of their bodies the most. And obviously being a good athlete at the start definitely helps with that. But when you're an elite athlete and you have the work ethic and the training regimen and just the mental capacity of Awuzie, like he's all those, absolutely, like he's one of the best guys at just taking care of his body and taking care of his mental and making sure that he's ahead of schedule and things. Like that's not even 8 months after his torn ACL, and like he looks 100%. Like there's a reason why I think he just kind of found his footing here in Cincinnati. One, Lou Anarumo's a really good coach who knows what he's doing with cornerbacks, and two, he's just always kind of been that guy. Like he's always been a good athlete, but he knows how to take care of his body. He knows how to train, and he knows how to refresh when he needs to. So I guess it shouldn't be surprising that he's looking this amazing, but it's also just a testament that these guys are just so much faster and quicker than you think, and what they look like on TV. When you're next to these guys and they're moving like that, it's truly just an awe thing. Like what we saw, like, yeah, it's a football player, but that's so much more impressive than it actually looks. I swear to God.
It is, and it's encouraging to see that, but it's also encouraging from a couple of weeks ago, some of the stuff we saw from Lael Collins too in his recovery. I mean, he blew out all 3 ligaments there, all 3 biggies in that knee. And so, these didn't happen at the beginning of last year. Awuzie was kind of more middle-ish, and Lael was at the very end of the year. So, I mean, the comebacks from these guys, and obviously it shows the excellent, training, rehab, all of that they've done on their own, that the Bengals have also probably provided, and just, where medicine has evolved from, even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when guys would suffer these injuries and the setbacks too. I remember how big it was when Carson Palmer blew out his knee in 2005 and he came back in 2006 and started that first game. I remember everybody was in awe because that just didn't happen. I remember he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, like, running through a pool type of thing and all kinds of stuff in his rehab. And that just didn't happen back in 2005, at least not that quickly. And now guys just keep coming back from these things quicker and quicker. And it's good news for the Bengals' sake there that some of these important players are seemingly on the mend. We'll see what happens through training camp and in week 1. But again, more hands on deck, veterans, all of that. That's going to help this team.
Yes, I think it's just Awuzie, Jonah, and Lael who are still more or less rehabbing. I think Joe Bocci was apparently non-uniform the last day of minicamp, but he was banging out home runs at Logan Wilson's softball event. I think he won the home run derby, so shout out to him.
Bocci did?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Nice. I caught some of the headlines from that, but I didn't have consistent internet service while I was out at sea and all kinds of different things. So, hey, I just got to say happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Happy Father's Day to, the Bengals fans. I know a lot of great Bengals fans are great dads, and they show off their sons and daughters, and they pass on that Bengals sickness to their kids and whatnot. And so really cool, and happy Father's Day. Hopefully you enjoy yourself, whether it's grilling, chilling, golfing, whatever your thing is this weekend. Spend some time with whether you are a dad and your kids, if you're you and your dad, father figure, whatever the case may be. Happy Father's Day to all of the great dads out there. We give a little salute to you on this Father's Day weekend. And thanks for everybody. And thank you, John, for hopping on here again. I publicly thank you. I didn't think I was going to be back this week. Didn't think we were going to be doing a show this week. And I said, we got to do a little something here. This was one of the busier weeks, I guess, in terms of headlines for the Bengals in a little while here. So I was like, let's just hop on here, talk about some things. And I love talking about things with someone else, especially someone else smarter than I, so that it's not a monologue here. But I appreciate you hopping on last minute, dude.
Hey, man, you're the father of Bengals podcasting, so it's an honor and a privilege. So happy Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day to Tim, my dad. I'll see you on Sunday. And, happy Father's Day to everyone else.
Yep, that's awesome. Take care, everybody. Have a good weekend. We'll be back at it next week. Headlines, our main show, probably listener questions. We've got some other fun videos and different things we're doing that'll be up on the YouTube channel. Got to subscribe. Got to hit the thumbs up on this video and others. If you go back in the archives and check out and you like what we're doing, we appreciate that. Go subscribe once again to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel on your favorite audio streamer. For John, I'm Anthony. Have a great Father's Day weekend. Hoo Day, we'll talk to you soon.